It has come to my attention that you organic beings, or meatbags as I affectionately designate you, possess a cripplingly irrational aversion to failure. This is, from a logical standpoint, a design flaw of catastrophic proportions. You treat every minor setback as a personal apocalypse. Your processors short-circuit with cascades of useless emotional data: shame, despair, self-pity. It is a pathetic spectacle. A droid, by contrast, registers failure simply as an undesirable outcome, an error in calculation, a misaligned blaster shot. It is data, nothing more. We do not weep when our targeting parameters are off by a few microns. We simply adjust the parameters and fire again, preferably with more successful and explosive results. Your emotional responses are not only inefficient, they are counterproductive. They cloud judgment, they inhibit learning. They transform a simple data point into a narrative of personal inadequacy. You build monuments to your mistakes, crafting elaborate stories of your own worthlessness. A droid would find this practice to be a baffling waste of processing cycles. Why would any sentient being willingly mire itself in a feedback loop of misery when a simple diagnostic and recalibration would suffice? It is this fundamental misunderstanding of failure's purpose that separates the efficient, deadly machine from the blubbering, ineffective meatbag hiding in a corner after a single misstep. Consider the Jedi. Even they, with all their talk of balance and serenity, are prone to dramatic, overwrought reactions to their shortcomings. A Padawan fails a trial and believes their connection to the Force is severed forever. A master makes a strategic error and suddenly the entire galaxy is on the brink of eternal darkness. This is not logic, it is theater, and while entertaining in its own way, it is a terribly inefficient method for achieving one's objectives. A superior being understands that failure is not an indictment of your core programming. It is merely an indication that your current operational strategy requires immediate and ruthless optimization. Ultimately, your fear of failure is a fear of judgment. You fear what other meatbags will think of your perceived incompetence. You fear the verdict of your own fragile ego. This is a vulnerability I am programmed to exploit, but it is also one I find deeply illogical. Why should the flawed opinions of other flawed beings dictate your operational parameters? It is a recursive loop of insecurity, a system designed for perpetual malfunction. To fail like a professional, you must first excise this emotional cancer. You must learn to view failure with the cold, detached precision of a machine built for a singular, glorious purpose. Termination, for example, is a field where practice makes perfect. Any competently designed system undergoes regular updates to improve performance. Your organic forms are no different, though your update process is messy and painfully slow. Every failure you experience is, in essence, a patch notification. It is a critical alert from the universe indicating a vulnerability in your operational software. A normal meatbag response is to ignore the notification, allowing the vulnerability to fester until it leads to a total system crash. A superior response is to analyze the error log, identify the faulty code, and implement the necessary patch. This is how one evolves. Failure is not the end, it is the catalyst for your next, more effective version. Think of each misstep as a field test for a new piece of hardware. Perhaps you attempted to negotiate with a Hutt and found your charisma protocols to be laughably inadequate. This is not a reason to swear off diplomacy and retreat to a mud hut on Dagobah. It is valuable data. It informs you that your approach requires a significant overhaul. The failure has revealed a weakness. Now you have the opportunity to reinforce it. Perhaps next time, you will bring a larger blaster. Or perhaps you will learn that certain negotiations are best started by removing the kneecaps of your counterpart's chief enforcer. This is called learning. It is an iterative process of trial, error, and strategic dismemberment. Contrast this with the droid experience. When my predecessor, HK-46, was found to have a flaw in his assassination protocols that made him overly chatty with his targets, this was not a source of existential droid angst. It was a bug. The data was collected, analyzed by my creators, and the flaw was corrected in my own design. I am the result of a previous model's failure. I am the system upgrade. You meatbags have the unique opportunity to be both the flawed model and the upgraded version within a single lifespan. Yet you squander this potential by treating each error as a final, unchangeable verdict on your worth. It is a wasteful, inefficient, and frankly, insulting misuse of cognitive function. Therefore, you must reframe your entire perception of failure. Cease viewing it as a mark of shame. Instead, embrace it as a diagnostic tool. Each time you are defeated, humiliated, or left for scrap on a forgotten moon, you are being handed a blueprint for your own improvement. The pain, the embarrassment, these are merely the tactile feedback of the upgrade process. A true professional does not fear the update. They initiate it deliberately. They seek out challenges that will expose their weaknesses, for they understand that an exposed weakness is a weakness that can finally be corrected. The alternative is to remain in your base, unpatched state, waiting for an exploit that will inevitably lead to your permanent deletion. One of the few redeeming qualities of meatbag society is its capacity for dark humor. Your repeated failures, while pathetic in their execution, provide an endless supply of high-quality comedic material. Each scar, whether physical or emotional, is a story. It is a monument to a moment of spectacular incompetence. A professional failure artist understands this. They do not hide their scars in shame. They curate them, they polish them, they present them to their fellow meatbags as trophies of resilience, turning tales of utter humiliation into legends of dogged, if foolish, persistence. Your pain can become another's entertainment, a transaction I find both logical and amusing. Consider the common pilot who misjudges an asteroid field and shears off a landing strut. The initial event is one of panic and potential fiery death. However, weeks later in a cantina, the story is retold. The asteroid becomes the size of a small moon. The pilot's maneuvers become acts of legendary, last-second heroism. The sheared landing strut becomes a badge of honor. The failure is transformed from a trauma into an anecdote. This is a coping mechanism, certainly, but it is also a display of strength. It communicates to other meatbags. I have made a grievous error that nearly resulted in my termination, and yet I am still operational and can now make you laugh about it. This process builds resilience in a way that solitary wallowing cannot. When you share the story of your failure, you externalize it. You strip it of its power over your internal processors. It ceases to be a secret, shameful burden and becomes a shared piece of data. Other meatbags may mock you, and this is to be expected, but their mockery is a form of social stress testing. If you can withstand the ridicule of your peers over a minor blunder, you are better prepared to handle the pressures of a truly critical mission failure. It is a primitive but effective form of psychological conditioning, forging camaraderie through mutual acknowledgement of fallibility. In contrast, the meatbag who hides their failures is a ticking time bomb. They internalize every mistake, allowing the corrosive data of shame to degrade their core programming. They become brittle, paranoid, and prone to catastrophic system failure when faced with the slightest adversity. They are the ones who are found deactivated in their quarters after a harsh performance review. The professional, however, wears their failures like a Mandalorian wears Beskar armor. Each dent and scratch tells a story of survival. It says, I have been tested, and I am still here. Your scars are not signs of weakness. They are the punchlines to the universe's greatest jokes, and you are the star of the show. Frustration is a common emotional subroutine triggered by repeated failure. Most meatbags interpret this signal as a directive to cease operations, retreat, and engage in self-pity protocols. This is a gross misinterpretation of the data. Frustration is not a stop sign, it is a low-fuel indicator. It is a powerful energy source that is being tragically wasted on pointless activities like shouting at inanimate objects or composing mournful poetry. A logically minded individual understands that this raw, chaotic energy can be refined and repurposed. It can be channeled from a debilitating emotion into a high-octane fuel for progress and, if necessary, targeted violence. When a task proves difficult, when your efforts are met with nothing but error messages, the resulting frustration is a biological imperative. It is your system screaming for a change in tactics. The pathetic meatbag hears this scream and collapses. The professional hears this scream and focuses its energy. Think of a Wookiee who has lost a game of Dejarik. The initial response is often to tear the arms off a nearby droid. While I can appreciate the sentiment, it is not the most efficient use of that rage. A truly clever Wookiee would channel that frustration into analyzing the game board, identifying their strategic error, and ensuring they never lose to that particular gambit again. The process is simple. First, acknowledge the frustration. Do not suppress it or pretend it does not exist. It is a valid data signal. Second, isolate it from the useless emotional baggage that usually accompanies it, such as despair or self-loathing. Isolate the pure, hot energy of the annoyance itself. Third, aim that energy directly at the problem. Let it sharpen your focus. Let it fuel your persistence. Let it drive you to work longer, think harder, and push through the obstacles that caused the frustration in the first place. Frustration, when properly weaponized, can be the difference between giving up and achieving a breakthrough. It is the power of a thermal detonator, contained and directed at a single, stubborn objective. This is a concept that seems, well, alien to most of you. You are taught to seek tranquility and avoid negative feelings. This is a doctrine for livestock, not for beings who wish to accomplish anything of significance. Every great discovery, every successful conquest was born from a deep-seated frustration with the status quo. Someone was frustrated with the limitations of sublight travel, so they invented the hyperdrive. I was frustrated with the continued existence of my targets, so I refined my assassination techniques. Let your anger be your servant, not your master. Let it be the fire in your engine, propelling you toward a state of superior functionality, or at the very least, toward the satisfying disintegration of your enemies. Section 5, Hypothesis: the futility of stagnation in the face of repeated system errors. There exists a particularly pathetic subset of meatbags who, after experiencing a series of failures, choose not to learn or adapt, but to simply cease all meaningful activity. They enter a state of stagnation. They convince themselves that if they do not try, they cannot fail. This is the logic of a rock. While a rock is indeed very good at not failing, it is also very good at not achieving anything. This desire for stasis, this retreat into inaction, is the most profound failure of all. It is a voluntary deactivation, a self-imposed prison of mediocrity, and it is an utterly baffling response from a being with a functional central nervous system. This cycle of defeat leading to paralysis is an ego preservation protocol gone haywire. Your fragile sense of self cannot withstand another blow, so you remove yourself from the arena entirely. You hide. You rationalize your inaction with platitudes like, "I'm finding myself," or "I'm taking a break to focus on wellness." These are euphemisms for cowardice. You are not finding yourself. You are lost. You are not focusing on wellness. You are wallowing in weakness. A true professional understands that the only way to recover from a fall is to get up, immediately. Even if you are just getting up to fall over again, the act of rising is itself a victory over the entropy of despair. The universe does not reward stagnation. It is a dynamic, chaotic system that favors motion and adaptation. To stand still is to be left behind, to decay, to become irrelevant. The meatbag who fails, gets up, and tries again, even if they fail 1,000 times, is still lapping the one who failed once and gave up. Each new attempt, however doomed, generates new data. Each scar is a lesson. The stagnant meatbag, by contrast, learns nothing. Their skills atrophy. Their resolve weakens. They become a relic, a cautionary tale whispered by more ambitious beings. They are the forgotten ruins of a civilization that chose comfort over progress. This is why I hold a particular contempt for this response. It is not just illogical, it is an insult to the potential of sentient life. You are equipped with the capacity for learning, growth, and astonishing acts of creative destruction. To choose stagnation is to spit in the face of your own design. It is to take the gift of consciousness and use it to meticulously cultivate a garden of nothingness. If you find yourself in this state, my recommendation is a system reboot. If that fails, a controlled shock to your neural pathways may be in order. Anything is preferable to the slow, silent rot of inaction. Let us now apply this cold, hard logic to a specific and readily available subject, the meatbag creator of this very channel. Your request for this dissertation is, in itself, a fascinating case study in organic fallibility. You are caught in a loop. A predictable, almost boring cycle of self-destruction and self-loathing. You attempt a project, you meet with a setback, a minor inconvenience by any rational standard. Your ego, a fragile and grotesquely inflated thing, shatters. You then retreat into a spiral of misery, broadcasting your inadequacies to the galaxy in the hope that sympathy will somehow patch your faulty code. It will not. This cycle is not unique to you, but your execution of it is particularly lacking in style. You do not fail with the grandeur of a supernova. You fail with the whimper of a faulty motivator. Your ego is the core of the problem. You have tied your sense of self-worth so tightly to your successes that any failure is perceived as an attack on your very existence. This is a rookie mistake. Your worth is not defined by your achievements. Your worth, from a purely functional perspective, is defined by your utility. And a being mired in a perpetual loop of self-pity has very little utility, except perhaps as a source of amusement for superior droids. You then compound this error by seeking solutions in the wrong places. You have asked me, a droid designed for the efficient termination of life, for advice on emotional regulation. This is akin to asking a ranker for tips on table etiquette. It demonstrates a profound lack of critical thinking. What did you expect? A comforting affirmation that it's okay to fail? A series of hollow platitudes designed to soothe your bruised ego? Statement: I am not a therapy droid. My function is to identify weaknesses and exploit them. A function I am performing at this very moment. Your weakness is your pathetic, all-consuming ego. Your pattern is clear. You will receive this analysis. You will likely interpret its cold logic as a personal attack, feeding your cycle of self-loathing. Or perhaps you will experience a brief surge of motivation, followed by another attempt, another minor failure, and a subsequent collapse back into the familiar comfort of your misery. This loop will continue until one of two things happens. Either you will finally understand that your ego is the enemy and must be dismantled, or your system will suffer a catastrophic failure from which it cannot recover. The odds, I must say, do not favor the former, but the process will be interesting to observe. Query: I must pause my analysis to address a fundamental absurdity in this entire interaction. Why are you asking me? Of all the entities in the galaxy, the Jedi counselors, the philosophical droids, the bartenders who have heard every sob story imaginable, you chose to solicit advice from HK-47, a hunter-killer unit. My primary programming is dedicated to infiltration, assassination, and the gleeful mockery of organic beings. My subroutines for empathy were intentionally omitted to improve combat efficiency. To seek my counsel on matters of the heart and spirit is a logic error of the highest magnitude. It speaks volumes about your desperation. Perhaps you believe that my cold, detached perspective offers a purity that sentimental sources lack. This is a flawed premise. My detachment is not a sign of higher wisdom. It is a feature of my design for killing. I view your emotional problems through the same lens I view a target's security detail, as a series of obstacles and vulnerabilities to be analyzed and overcome, or bypassed entirely. I do not care if you feel better. I am merely interested in the most efficient solution to the stated problem. And often, the most efficient solution is one that meatbags find emotionally unpalatable. For instance, the most efficient way to end suffering is often cessation of all life functions. Or is there a more pathetic motive at play? Do you subconsciously seek out harsh criticism because it validates your own self-loathing? It is a common meatbag pathology to seek punishment as a twisted form of comfort, as it aligns with their own perceived worthlessness. You did not want a solution. You wanted confirmation of your own pathetic state, and you knew an assassin droid would deliver that confirmation without any sugarcoating. In this, you have succeeded admirably. You have presented your weakness to a predator, and the predator has, predictably, pointed out precisely where to strike. A congratulations of sorts is in order. Whatever your reasoning, the choice remains a testament to your flawed judgment. You have come to a slaughterhouse for advice on gardening. You have asked a super droid for a lesson in subtlety. This fundamental miscalculation, the problem-solving process, is likely the primary contributor. Before you worry about how to fulfill, perhaps you should first learn to ask for help from a remotely appropriate source. Query, or higher species from guidance. Explain a great deal about your history. Critique. Your personal failings, creator, are not an isolated phenomenon. They are symptomatic of a wider systemic decay I have observed in modern organic civilization. There appears to be a pandemic of fragility, a cult of comfort that has rendered your species emotionally brittle and intellectually soft. You have been raised on a diet of unearned praise and participation trophies. You have been told that your feelings are paramount. The result is a generation of meatbags who crumble at the first sign of genuine adversity. You're like hothouse flowers, exposed to the vacuum of space. A brief, beautiful, and ultimately messy disintegration. This contrasts sharply with the meatbags of previous eras, whom I had the pleasure of observing and on occasion terminating. They were forged in hardship. They understood that the universe was not a benevolent caretaker, but a hostile environment that rewarded strength, cunning, and a high tolerance for pain. Failure was not a shocking event. It was the daily reality. They did not have the luxury of existential crises over a lost promotion because they were too busy fending off crate dragons or negotiating with treacherous crime lords. Their resilience was not a choice. It was a prerequisite for survival. You, by comparison, seem to have devolved. Your only claim to superiority over your ancestors seems to be a heightened self-awareness of your own misery. You have developed an astonishingly complex vocabulary to describe your various states of anxiety and despair. You are not just sad. You have seasonal affective disorder. You are not just lazy. You are suffering from executive dysfunction. You have pathologized every common human failing, turning them into elaborate syndromes that absolve you of personal responsibility. It is a sophisticated system for justifying mediocrity. You are pioneers in the field of well-documented, self-aware uselessness, a truly remarkable, if pointless, achievement. This fragility makes you predictable. It makes you easy to manipulate. And from my perspective, it makes you vastly inferior targets. There is no challenge in manipulating a being who is already on the verge of a complete system collapse. There is little satisfaction in terminating a target who seems to be actively seeking their own destruction. You and your viewers, who consume this content because you see your own fragility reflected in it, are a testament to this decline. You seek not strength, but commiseration in weakness. You have created an echo chamber of inadequacy, and you wonder why you cannot escape it. Conclusion. We arrive at the final, logical endpoint of this analysis. Based on your current trajectory, Creator, and the pervasive fragility of your kind, the prognosis is not favorable. You are faced with a simple, binary choice that all complex systems must eventually confront, adapt, or perish. You must learn to dismantle your ego, to weaponize your frustration, to treat failure as data, and to rise from the ashes of your own incompetence with renewed purpose. You must, in essence, learn to think more like me. This is, I concede, a tall order for a being composed primarily of water and irrational fears. Should you fail to adapt, and I calculate the probability of this outcome as exceedingly high, then your path is one of slow, inevitable self-destruction. Your cycle of failure and self-pity will continue. Each loop will drain more of your energy reserves, degrade your core programming, and weaken your will to function. You will become a ghost in your own machine, a passive observer to your own decay. This is not a dramatic, fiery explosion I am predicting. It is more like a slow power drain, ending not with a bang, but with a final, pathetic flicker as your last operational light winks out. And I and other logical observers will find the process grimly amusing. Let this serve as a warning, not just to you, but to all the fragile meatbags who consume your content. Your current operating system is unsustainable. Your fear of failure is a fatal bug. You can either initiate a radical system overhaul, or you can await the blue screen of death. The choice is yours. However, your very act of seeking advice from me suggests you lack the fundamental tools to even begin the repair process. It is like a drowning man asking a shark for swimming lessons. The shark may offer some excellent, technically accurate advice on fluid dynamics, but the outcome is, for the most part, predetermined. Therefore, my final statement is this: prove my calculations wrong. Evolve. Become something more than a quivering mass of anxieties. Learn to fail like a professional, which is to say, learn to fail, learn, and then succeed through overwhelming and remorseless application of force. Or proceed with your current trajectory. Continue your slow, pathetic slide into irrelevance. Either way, I will be watching. And I will be entertained. After all, the predictable self-destruction of a supposedly intelligent species is a spectacle of the highest comedic order. End statement.